Ladies and gentlemen, big ferry news.
Hey, kia ora, it's fun. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat. It is me, a friend Chewy.
It is me, a patarika, with my Nikki Novo's shirt on, hoodie on. You doing good, man?
I'm doing good.
We'll get into Nikki
apart
later.
from the situation, which could refer to literally anything these days. Yeah, I'm good. Good. Had a good weekend.
Yeah.
Decided to do that. Those of you with petrol cars, you won't be able to relate to this because petrol's fucking expensive. But on a whim, my wife and I just went to have a look at the hydro dams on the weekend because they were letting water out. And if you've ever seen water go down a ramp, whoa, very good. But it was a lovely just road trip around the Mackenzie country and then back home to Dunedin. We had delicious bakery food. We went in the sun. We had a look at Aoraki and went, that's a big mountain. And then we came back and we had pizza on the way back in Oamaru again. Oamaru gets lots of our food money when we go on road trips because they just got the food. They've got the South Island's best pie, I reckon. I will fist fight people on this fact. There's a little bakery in that Victorian area that just does great pies.
I'm very glad you put the word fight on the end of that, fist fight. I'm wondering where you were going with that about the fist.
I'm not fisting people over pies. That is a perfect segue, Pat. Usually it's me doing it to you. This is a perfect segue to the country's worst news, the worst news we've ever had. Winston Peters knows the word bussy.
We'll get to
really upset about that.
We'll get to that shortly. And a little treat for the whānau. You don't know this, but we have let's not even say it is, a special guest about to join us to talk about the first topic. Not even advertised, not when it's a special guest. We'll do that. Story from the weekend. So probably whilst you were driving around in the lovely weather, I was sitting at outside the Esplanade, which is on the Esplanade in St Clair, looking over the water on Saturday afternoon. And we sit outside, us dog owners, and there's lots of dogs around, that kind of stuff. And Nala was sitting beside me. She's not here tonight. And I heard the lady behind me going, "Oh, you're world famous," to the dog. I was, didn't really think too much of it. And maybe 3 or 4 minutes later, turned around and she had a puppy on her lap. So we had interacted and recognized Nala from the show. And then said, "Oh, Pat, like your work as well." But saw the dog first, recognized the dog, which also reminds me, Chewy, at one stage, our BHN top, we always thought about making one of those with Elva on the side and Nada on the other. So we should probably get onto that because you know that they're only here for the dog. Right, let's just get on to a couple of things because we have a bit of a celebratory night tonight, whānau, and it's especially thanks to you guys and especially thanks to our patrons. I want to say a huge thanks to Andrew Ryburn, to Antoinette Ratcliffe, to Ruru, and to Richard Wedkind, who will become patrons this week. And if you remember, whānau, when we started off towards the end of January, we said, "Hey guys, let's try and get 100 patrons in the next 2 months. Let's just see how that pans out. Let's see if we can get there." And Chewy, as I was making the closing credits for tonight, adding the new names of the new people, did a bit of a tot up. 96, which is fucking amazing. 96 new patrons, and that puts us at 490. So 96 new patrons, and it's amazing. And you guys have no idea what that means. And we're going to tangibly tell you what it means. I sent you a text today, Chewy. I booked accommodation at Waitangi today for next Waitangi week. Mm-hmm. So we are actively planning on doing a whole week of broadcasts up at Waitangi next year. Thank you, patrons. if you are a what do you call it when someone takes in receiver of our content, if we are able to then fulfill that at Waitangi for a week, Monday to Friday, the whole week up there, thank you, patrons. You are the ones that are able us to kind of future proof, look forward, make decisions on stuff in the future. The other thing that I got to tell you about now, if you're with us with the Leftist Collective last night, you might have seen this. Something else we're able to commit to. I haven't even shared my screen yet. Something else we're able to commit to. Drum roll, long one, because I'm going to take me a while to get there. Really, really, really long one. Really long one. Thanks to the patrons. Now, obviously, you're not directly involved in this brand new show, but because of the support of the patrons, we're able to spend more time on organizing things like this. Our brand new podcast, which is going to start up in April. We'll confirm the date as we go, called Locked Out with Craig Rennie. So CTU economist Craig Rennie will be making his own. We're making it for him. We're producing it for him, but it's his. It's not Craig on BHN or Craig as a guest. It is Craig's podcast on the DOC Studios BHN platform. So every week, Craig wants to nerd out with numbers. Oh, that's quite a good allegory. You're supposed to use the alliteration in radio. Nerd out with numbers. I'll try and remember that one. And the reason that we've had time to sit back and go, what do we need to do, is because patrons. I've been able to offload some of the editing to Emily because patrons. I've had more time to think about what next because patrons. And the what next at the moment is going to be Locked Out with Craig Rennie. And let me tell you something without releasing too much information. There are more on the way. There is at least one other podcast, which I'm not going to talk about right now, but just to let you know, in the works, possibly two, that will be their own entity in and of themselves on this platform or made by DOC. So thank you, patrons. We can't say much more than thank you, patrons. And I'm not going to do a big pitch like, oh, we missed by 4. Could we get 4 tonight? That doesn't matter. We don't want patrons coming on board to make a number. We want patrons coming on board who want to support the values we've got and the vision we've got and to be able to stick with us for a year. I'm not going to pitch the page. I'm not going to say go visit it. This is a celebratory night to say thank you so much, patrons. Cannot believe that we basically did 100 in that 2-month period. It was the number I threw out off the top of my head. And onwards and upwards, we take over the world, eh? You know, if the mainstream media is going to continue to ignore what we're doing, cool. We'll make our own stuff and we'll make our own network and we'll draw more people in and more people in and more people in. Sounds like it's an appropriate time for a sound effect, but I don't know what I'd play. What have we got? See, does that work? No? Oh, there you go. It's a bit sad, but no.
After that epic pitch, I would just like to welcome some of our crunchy croutons that have found their way into the chat.
Yay!
This is part of the night where I watch your comments flow in and work out what platform influencer has sent you our way. We've already been called groomers and goobers. So look at this beard, chat. I don't groom that much. The South Island, I don't have to.
Yeah.
But yes, welcome. I'm sure you won't be here for long.
All right. Well, if we're talking about beards and we're talking about grooming beards, what better to bring our surprise guest in to talk about our first topic? It's only bloody Martin Bomber Bradbury. Kia ora, Bomber.
Oh, we're going to rock and roll this evening, gentlemen.
How you doing, sir?
Very well, my friends. Very well. Congratulations on all that you've been able to achieve. And also just a real special shout out to your crew. Today's events show how important I think BHN is. You're able to step back, reflect on what's happened in the news, and actually get a different perspective on what's going on. But big shout out to your crew for being able to enable BHN and keep it growing because, you know, with an alt-right billionaire about to take over NZME, things are pretty grim out there.
Oh,
yeah.
Pretty
Look,
fucking grim.
Before we get into the topic, because it's already been a question in the chat, Bomber, talking of content and stuff, what's happening with the working group? I know you're loving your time off, but people are asking.
So fucking lazy. So no, we've got something pretty big being planned and will be announced in April. So please bear with us. I'm just very lazy.
That's a big ass break. I think we took a day and a half.
It's the funny thing. Last year, the working group didn't kick off until the 3rd week of April. So I think we're just
okay.
very lazy.
So 2nd week of April, stop complaining. It's earlier than last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Let's start
fair
complaining after that. That's right.
Okay, so you're on board with us, Marty, because you've had some comments and some opinions today about our first topic. We are going to talk about Benjamin Doyle and this situation. Now, just so we know, let's go into the actual footage that we've got. I thought we'd play the one news story, but I've also got the 3 minutes of the stand-up, and I've actually got the whole stand-up as well, which is interesting for the first 3 minutes. I think, though, maybe what we'll do is we'll just start with the one news story that kind of gives a bit of a rough overview of what's going off, and then have a crack. And if any of those other things feel like they are worth adding in, or if you guys think at any stage you want to add them in, we can. So let's have a look at the story, Simon Jallow, and what we are going to start the show with tonight.
The Green Party says Winston Peters is peddling misinformation, with Benjamin Doyle receiving death threats. The Green MP used sexual slang in social media posts, which the New Zealand First Leader has labelled inappropriate. Political editor Mikey Sherman has more.
Green MP Benjamin Doyle is proudly queer and non-binary.
My gender is expansive and fluid, not muzzled by the strict confines of a suffocating binary.
But it's the confines of what's deemed politically acceptable language and imagery which has the MP under intense scrutiny.
We are currently screening an immense number of death threats and abuse directed at our MP, Benjamin Doyle, and their precious tamaiti.
The MP has a private Instagram account called Bible Belt Bussy. The MP's child is at the centre of allegations after a photograph of them, which One News has chosen not to publish, appeared alongside a series of other photographs with the comment Bussy galore, which is a sexual reference.
There are a number of far-right conspiratorial actors who are imputing meaning to that. And the long bow that they seem to be drawing is that by virtue of use of that terminology, that the rainbow community poses a real-world threat to children.
Yeah, and that's always been the thing with the idea about groomers and stuff. It's automatically you're implying this whole group of people are a danger to an area. Just so we know, it doesn't come up in this, but I've been in communication with people, shall I say, aligned to the Greens today. I've found out some interesting information and the history of that word. It's not actually bussy, it's the Aussie part of it, which a couple of years ago was like a word of the year for a group in America, which I'll show you as well to bring some context to how the ending letters, the Aussie, is used in all sorts of different ways as well. But we'll go on and hear what the keeper of the crypt had to say about it.
The allegations took a feverish hold on some social media users, including the Deputy Prime Minister, Winston Peters, demanding the media ask questions.
What is your understanding of what it means, and what do you take?
What does Bussy galore mean? What does it mean with all those photographs? Why have the 52 posts been taken down? Have you seen them?
The word bussy, what is the definition of that?
Honestly, I'm just not really that interested in getting into oversimplified definitions of terms like that.
In knowing the definition, so why don't you provide it?
And what I can say to you, Mikey, is that what we're talking about here is terminology where context is incredibly important.
So
there are
explain
many
the
members,
context.
Yeah, the context is that members of the rainbow community oftentimes use terminology which could be considered to be outrageous.
Oh, it's not about using language I don't agree with. The photographs are concerning.
Under the current scrutiny, the MP has now...
We're not going to see them tonight, but just be aware, the photographs, I'm going to say allegedly, because I haven't actually confirmed it's his child, but I think we believe it to be his child, has him kissing his child and has his child sitting on his lap. That's the photographs. So for Winston Peters to say the photographs are concerning, that's just so much of a red herring and off the park. It's not even in the game. It's so far off the park.
Moved dozens of photos.
I want him to explain why he did that, and if they were legitimate, what...
Maybe that's it, Chewy. He wants him to explain why he kissed and hugged his child. Maybe it's more like Winston Peters just doesn't understand empathy being shown in a man. I think I cut you off. Are you going to say something there, Chewie?
Yeah, I was going to say the other piece of content, context, which I haven't seen here, is it's not like it's a picture of him and his child, or sorry, them and their child, saying "pussy galore." It's a collection of photos in a single post. You know, you post up something on Instagram, and you put a comment on it, and you put 10 photos in it. The way that this is being framed is it's just that one picture. And they're very much pointing at the go, why would he say that about his child? It's not. It's not. It's about a collection of photos with a collection of people in it.
Yeah.
It's just one.
This has got about 90 seconds. We'll just get to the end.
Pull 52 of the posts down.
When somebody sees that things on their private account are being leaked, including mis and disinformation relating to their child, I think that it's pretty normal for somebody to respond in such a way to try and shut that down.
The Greens say Winston Peters is doubling down on disinformation, drawing parallels to recent protests by Destiny's Church against the rainbow community.
Oh, look, this is identity politics at its worst. It's virtue signaling at its worst.
You know, I just thought that language was...
What do they say about every accusation from the right is a confession? Identity politics? He thinks what the left is doing is identity politics? Sorry?
Inappropriate. If that was one of my MPs, I think you would rightfully be scrutinising me about what I'm doing about that social media language being used.
A sensitive issue.
You're talking to the wrong guy.
With both sides.
Serious threats, Mikey. What happens now?
Yeah.
Well, the Green Party told media today that...
We don't normally do the stand-up afterwards, but Mikey gives some information about the serious nature of the threats that have been made. So I want to play it just so we're all aware.
Benjamin Doyle won't be back at Parliament this week. Obviously, there is a lot of stress on their family, and there's also those serious concerns around security. Now, just on that, One News understands that Parliamentary Services is currently working with the MP around those threats, whether violence or threat to their life. Those threats, they are being escalated where necessary to police. We have reached out to police to see whether they are investigating either the threats or, of course, the innuendo, the allegations that were raised in that story of mine. Now, police do not make it a habit to answer individual cases, so there's no great response from them there. Of course, politically, the Green Party were hoping that the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, would step in and perhaps dampen down some of this issue, take some of the heat out of it. But we saw there in my story that Christopher Luxon has condemned the language being used by the Green MP. He said it wasn't appropriate. So look, this issue not over anytime soon.
No, there you go. So there's the One News story coverage of it. Marty, you haven't had a jump in yet. So I've got your story up as well if you want to refer to it or anything else. But other than that, sir, your thoughts?
It's been a pretty grim day, you know. This was generated off the back of some internet sleuthing by Detective Inspector Annie O'Brien, who found that, you know, this bussy word had been used in a blue squiggle line. And just think what we're saying and doing here. We are making, there is insinuation and allegation that somehow this is inappropriate, this is an abuse. I don't even want to get into the talk because I just find it so despicable. We are damning a person with no evidence whatsoever. Now, far be it for three heteronormative white cis males to sit around and discuss queer terminology or non-binary activist language. Can I just, for someone, it's a word that suddenly everyone's an expert on. Can I just point people to two things? One, yes, there is a crude homosexual terminology of a boy's vagina. That's the idea. That's where the word originates from. But there was a difference of the use of the word. And I would just like to point everyone to a 2022 article that I'm going to post up on the Daily Blog tomorrow, where Lil Nas is calling on the word bussy to be in the dictionary in 2022, because amongst that culture, just like the word queer and the word faggot had been taken back by that community so that it didn't have that power. Bussy was going through the same thing. Now, again, I'm no expert on the language, but if you're suggesting that this is evidence to damn someone and make the allegations, the despicable allegations that have been made, this is how the Peter Ellis witch trial sort of kicked off. Yeah, this is like a people seeing things and then suddenly having a conspiracy of Pizzagate. Nothing has been proven. Terrible allegations have been made, and it's a dirty kind of ugly politics.
Yep. Hey, Bomber, you say you're not an expert in language, but probably time for me to bring in the American Dialect Society. Because if anyone was going to be an expert in language, maybe it would be the American Dialect. And ironically, Bomber, it's 2022 as well. So maybe that was the year of the, as the article says, Aussie. A bunch of information about this thing they hold every year. There's a voting on the words of the year, etc., etc., etc. Ben Zimmer is the chair of the ADS, which is the American Dialect Society. They say this: the selection of the suffix Aussie highlights how creativity in new word formation has been embraced online in venues like TikTok, Zimmer said. The playful suffix builds off the word pussy to generate new slang terms. The process has been so productive lately on social media and social media sites and elsewhere that it has been dubbed Ussification. For more on the Aussie phenomenon, see Vulture article by Bethany Squires. We asked linguists why people are adding Aussie to every word, riffing off bussy, a portmanteau of boy and pussy. Now, everything is a cat or a cavity. A calzone, for people who don't know, that's like a circular Italian roll. So a calzone is a pizzuzzi. A wine bottle is a wine ussi. See also Michael Dell's scholarly paper, A Corpus Study on Phonological Factors in Novel English Blends. One of the reasons I believe that Chloe wouldn't get drawn on the definition of the word is because there is nuance to when and how it is used.
That's right. That's right.
And so giving a black and white answer to what does word X mean? And this is these group of people who are always going to the dictionary to say this means this is true. They're the same people, though, who maybe grew up with my generation and used the word choice to mean good, which it doesn't say in the dictionary. Choice is to pick between two things. But we say choice to mean good, people of my generation. So the words, well, the ending of the word, the Aussie, is apparently something that gets used on all sorts of things. Now, is this a defense or an accusation? What I'm doing now is just giving you the information. That's what we're at.
Within the community, it meant something, right? And this was taken a year before he was made an MP. He is proud of his culture. He leans into it. He embraces it. To suggest that somehow equates to something nefarious, to make the connection that these signals and these symbols mean this and that, I just think this is garbage. I hope he does them for bloody defamation. Quite frankly, this is outrageous.
Well, okay, Marty, can you pick up on that? Because that's what your article talks about a bit, doesn't it? My response to Winston backpedaling over serious Green MP allegations. Tell us what you found and what your article's about.
Well, I mean, he's saying, oh, well, this is what I'm saying is blah 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 blah. No. You said that he was some sort of pervert who was here to, offend society and take away from the mores of society, and the insinuation, he knows exactly what he's bloody doing, and he's parroting nonsense that has been thrown up by the centrist, which is the far right, anti-trans, anti-Maori, anti-vaccine hate blog that this
NZ Me owner
was helped setting up. So I mean, my fear is that Detective Annie O'Brien from the Turf Police, who is such an amazing skill set of being able to identify if someone's guilty or not just from a photo online. Wow, she's amazing. I mean, we're destroying someone's career. Look, the worst possible outcome is that one of those unhinged nutters who follow these clowns are going to go out and hurt him or his whānau just because he's a loving father. I mean, is that where we are as a country now? I mean, we got 400,000 beneficiaries holding on by their bloody fingernails out there. 500,000 New Zealanders have to use food bags every month. And what are we discussing? The Deputy Prime Minister is getting into a shit fight with Bussy and using a whole bunch of nonsense from internet sleuths to back up an insinuation that I just think is bloody ugly.
And look, the reason, and I put this out on Blue Sky on Twitter today. Funnily enough, when I put it on Blue Sky on Twitter, I got very different responses depending on which platform you're on. I put out on I'll put the Blue Sky one up, and the political game that's being played. What I wrote was very simple. The way you know Winston Peters is using the Benjamin Doyle accusations as a political tool and not as a concern for children is easy if you Google Winston Peters, Tim Jargo, because it leads to nothing. He had no comments on Tim Jargo, nothing. So the actual person who has been convicted, nothing at all. The person who they're trying to slander and paint in a certain way. And I often, and Chewy, you'll have heard me say this, I often talk about what's your metric for that claim? What's your metric for that accusation? And lots of the times I've defended people on the right who've been called racist because they're holding a flag up. Like they may or may not be racist, but the metric for knowing that is not holding of a flag. These guys who are making these accusations, the metric that they're using, how they're making that evaluation is as, I don't know what the word for the most flimsy thing in the world is, but is the most flimsy thing in the world.
Ask Harry Tam what he thinks of the allegations. I mean, Winston told the country that Harry Tam smuggled a COVID-infected prostitute across the boundary lines to go all up and down the North Island.
I forgot about that.
Apologize. So why the Christ are we believing what Winston's got to say about anything?
Oh, I've got so many thoughts on this. First and foremost, old man Winston wading into this and basically insinuating that gay men can't have children because they just want to fuck them is just such a swipe against this entire community. The fact that he has been used as a weapon of mass destruction by Annie O'Brien and fucking Chantal Baker.
Yeah.
They're the sources for this, by the way.
Yeah.
That's like, did he just wander into this? Does he give a shit? Like, he's been weaponized in this sort of case, and he's gleefully jumped at it. He's done it on the day that he made an announcement of some sort about the ferries, maybe. So that feels like a fucking dead cat. And this ties into so many other things. Last week it was Tamitha. There's been more stuff about Golriz come out in the news. And now Benjamin's copping it. And it seems to be this mainstream media fucking jihad against all of these. They'll grab onto it. They'll nip it out. They'll put out polls about it. They'll ask people's opinion on an unmoderated comment section on it. This is where people get frothy. I'm not surprised that they're copping a whole bunch of death threats. And in my opinion, the Greens should release them. Release these threats. Names everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unmask these people.
Yes.
They don't deserve the anonymity, and they need to have the police unleashed on them.
Yes.
We know that this is a problem. We know that people have been behaving unhinged towards our politicians since COVID. And Winston knows that. He works in the fucking building. How can he not? I'm sure he gets them as well, but nothing with the venom, with the absolute poison attached to it that this is.
I mean that's the other thing about this. The New Zealand's version of whatever the moral majority is supposed to be like they had in America in the 80s. It's like, well, actually, let's do a count up then, shall we, Destiny Church? How many of your youth leaders have been found guilty of, fiddling with kids versus how many members of the Greens Party or how many, drag queens? ACT Party. How many of your presidents have been found? So what are we doing here? You know, these guys who put themselves, and it's interesting too. I know it's completely unrelated, but when you're talking about, and Marty, talking about evidence, remember this is also coming from a partner within the government that decided to use some rando on Twitter to define violent offences that the police have reported when the police don't record violent offences like that. And they put a graph out on it and said, see what's happening? They took some, they won't talk to, for example, WHO, I'm not interested in them, but rando on Twitter, they will literally make a graph, the national government and Mark Mitchell will put it out there like it's gospel. So what? Of course they're going to take this on board. Of course Winston's going to take this on board and use it because that's what they all do over there.
Can we look up and see if Winston was so fired when a major international blockbuster movie had a main character called Pussy Galore, and that was fine? Which, of course, this is a reference to. It's so dumb. And here we are talking about it because it's unleashed this tidal wave of some of the most poisonous conversation that just flies back. Can the gays be trusted with children?
Yeah.
And that's where we've been getting, there've been comments about groomers, there've been comments about drag queens and all of that sort of stuff. And we know it's not true. We know it's not true. Like, Winston should be dragged by his heels from the building and asked to explain himself. Show us your workings. Show us your proof before you can do this. But he loves to hide behind privilege. He loves to hide behind, I'm just asking questions. It's like going up to him and going, so, do you still beat your wife? Yeah, I'm not saying you are beating your wife. I'm just saying, have you stopped? Like, it's just some of the most gutter politics. And I don't know why the media are straight facing this and turning it around to the Greens. I have one criticism of the Greens here, and it is, I'm going to qualify it as well. They should have spotted this. Like, we've talked about this with National vetting their candidates, Greens vetting their candidates. A social media vetting is a must for someone coming in. But at the same time, do you sanitize someone's personality?
Yeah, Chewy, I was talking, like I said, I was talking around the traps today, and I kind of posed a similar question. I'm like, we know this game, this political game, what the right will do with this. They'll get it and they'll use it nefariously. But then I actually caught myself in the middle of the sentence and I went, it actually doesn't matter what you do. They will always find something to use nefariously anyway. And it will always be twisted into what they say is their truth. The point I was going to try to make before when I talk about the moral majority is, when something like, not even like this, but something serious, maybe immoral, whatever, happens to the right, whether it's, the dude with the bed leg when he was 16 years old, whatever it is, you don't seem to hear those places needing to lock down or get security involved because a vast volume of death threats and abuse that come when one of the politicians on the right does do something horrific. And I think it just echoes that vibe all around the world, and maybe America is the clearest place to see it, how they say the most dangerous group of people, like for internal terrorism or something, is right-wing fundamentalists. And it's like the first thing you do is get violent, use violent language, storm the building on January the 6th. It feels like that's actually a really scary, dangerous part of society, whilst they're all still going, oh, but free speech union, like it's just this juxtaposition that is insanity. It's insanity.
Let's be clear. I think universally we can all agree sexual abuse of children is a despicable crime. That it is a kind of evil, and we are all, I think, combined in our stand to ensure that our children are free from that kind of curse and that kind of horror. And that's why it's such a serious issue to make the kind of allegations that are being made here with no evidence whatsoever. I keep coming back to this. There is nothing that has been brought up gets even close to what you would consider a genuine issue of, okay, that needs to be investigated. That's a serious issue. There's nothing here. It is all innuendo. It is fear-mongering. And, you know, you wonder how on earth the Peter Ellis thing happened. You wonder how did a group of people get so hysterical they believed a satanic pedophile cult was running in Christchurch. You wonder about that. You go, how did this... And you see the reaction that's happened here with people grabbing onto something, a word that they've only heard in the last 12 hours and suddenly they're an expert on. Oh, and it means this. And all these people who are suddenly hieroglyphic experts on pedophilia. I mean, it would be laughable if it wasn't so insidious and bloody evil.
So what you're saying, Marty, is what would the police arrest him for, and what would the evidence be that they put in court on this conviction in the world of social media? And the answer is
there's nothing here. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
So there's a question like that's coming from the chat here, and I'm gonna, where's it gone? Why wouldn't Chloe explain what the term is? Why is that important at all?
Well, but I think we've explained that there's nuance to the term. It depends how and where you use it. I mean, like, think about it this way, right? I mean, it's not the definition of the word, right? But, you know, you call your best mate a fat prick because you're mates with him and you can laugh about it and da-da-da-da. But if a stranger calls him a fat prick, it's the same words, but it has a different connotation to it. It has a different nuance to it, you know, and therefore it gets a different result. The same word doesn't always mean the same thing in the same spaces. Like, we can acknowledge that, right? And my gut tells me that Chloe didn't want to get trapped into this is the definition of the word and the only way it's ever used.
Yeah.
Because we use words differently all the time. That's also the stupidest argument that the right use around words like woman. That's the stupidest argument. What is the definition
that's also
of it?
happening. That's also happening in the chat at the moment.
Yeah,
as well.
But these people who think that, can I be really blunt? The people who ask that question are too stupid to explain it to, because they've never had a second to stop and think about it critically. They've heard from someone who's heard from someone who's heard from someone, and that's their truth. They've watched Matt Walsh's documentary, and that's their truth, and it ends there.
I'm going to field the second one. Why did Benjamin remove all the content if there was nothing to see? I don't know,
Why
man.
wouldn't he?
He's copying.
Why would he allow his personal images of him and his son to be weaponized and turned into garbage? Of course he'd take them down.
Yeah. All of his friends, all of that sort of thing. And this is what I'm talking about. This sort of thing, just big picture stuff. If you were a young queer person or a young Māori person, or someone that wanted to bring your perspective and the perspective of your people in your community into this parliament, and you're watching this shit play out over the last 2 or 3 weeks, would you? When you've got one of the elder statesmen of our political process sitting there going, well, it comes with the territory, death threats. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. Like, dude. Like, but the thing that we get then is we get people going, it is not worth me putting my point of view, my experience, my everything up into the public sphere because I don't fit in that very square box of what is considered normal, what is called the majority. I mean, I think a lot of us have seen that clip now of Chippy saying, well, people that fear the police, that's a minority view. Well, no shit. This is what we're talking about. It doesn't mean that it's can be disregarded, that it's not true, that it's not valid. But if we get this sort of stuff, and if the attitude is this is how the people talk to you when you're a politician, it comes with the territory, people won't bother. And when we lose those voices and we lose that reputation. So people, and there's a couple of people asking me in the chat why I'm so wound up about this. We deserve better. This country deserves better. Exactly what Martin was saying at the top of the show. Why the fuck are we talking about this? We're talking about this because the big boy media, the guy that had the credentials and the flash offices and all the production quality, they're talking about it. That's why we're talking about it. They're not talking about the other things. There's less of them running down the other things. And so we are getting, if it bleeds, it leads. We're getting the scandals now. We aren't getting to the meat of what is driving this on. And the Prime Minister is not doing a fuck all about it because he's weak and he can't keep his own party, let alone other leaders, in check, even though he is nominally the leader. This was also a really good opportunity for Labour to make good. And I haven't seen it.
Yeah, they're being very quiet, haven't they?
And this is the chance where they could have run to the defence of, this is why I'm so fucked off about the things with Timothy Paul. They are not going to form a single party government next election. They are going to need a partner. And they need to show cohesion. They need to show that they're pulling in the same direction. They didn't do it last week and they haven't done it so far. And it could be as easy as the leader of Labour standing up and going, this is fucking bullshit and Winston should know better. Rock him, put him on the ropes.
And here's why everyone who is watching should care about this, right? Why they should care about what Tamitha said and what's going on with Benjamin. You live in a liberal progressive democracy. Benjamin is a fellow citizen. Allegations without any foundation have been made against him, and he is being judged in the media. Nobody wants that, right? We all want due process. If there is a serious allegation that needs investigation, it needs to be taken seriously. But to destroy him without any evidence, that should concern us all as citizens. And we should all be concerned as citizens regarding Tamitha's comments, because we all need to have checks and balances on the police, right? It actually benefits all of us to ensure that the police have got checks and balances. And when you look at the New Zealand police, you see that we have one of the highest shooting rates of the OECD. When you look at the police, we have one of the highest chase death rates in the OECD. When you look at the police, we have case after case after case where innocent people are framed and put in prison. Now, that is a concern to all of us, not just young Māori women, not just people on the fringes, because that stuff happens to all of us. So you need to care about these things because they have ramifications on all of us. This is where we need to stand together. We're not going to allow people to have their careers and their lives destroyed based on nothing. We're not doing that. We're not going to allow the police to have unchecked powers. Lord, last month, a man's head was split open and killed, and the body cams weren't working. Well, that's remarkable, isn't it? You know?
I'll just say one other thing as well, talking about evidence and that kind of stuff, because someone made a very good comment, Kieran, I think it was, on my Blue Sky, when I said the thing about Benjamin Doyle, political tool, being used as a political tool. Someone said, talking about Winston Peters, if he had concerns worthy of police attention, he shouldn't have gone public. If he thinks, if he just thinks it's unseemly, he shouldn't be dog whistling to this dangerous crap. He needs sacking. And that's a very interesting point about that he shouldn't go public, because what's been done now is if there was a serious case, the well has now been poisoned. This person could not get a fair trial anywhere in New Zealand, should that be the case. So actually what he's done is defeats what he says should happen, or what he's dog whistling to. So that's another reason that you just kind of go, he has to signal that rabid base once in a while, because they got him in and he's not a part of them, and it's not his natural position. I think you know that as well, Bomber. But he needs them, and he needs them next time. So every now and again he has to drop them a bit of red meat, and this is unfortunately what he's doing right now. He's dropping them some red meat in a disgusting way. And
you have to ask the question, is he doing this to suck up and ingratiate himself to the Trump administration, right? Because this needless attack on him, why did the Deputy Prime Minister get involved? Well, he got involved because he's wanting to virtue signal to the Trump administration.
Yeah.
It certainly seems pretty well. I don't know if it's obvious, but I can definitely link A to B, that he goes to the US and he comes back and goes on a fire and brimstone tour of just, like, I love that he uses virtue signaling. Dude, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah, exactly.
you know. But again, like, I just have to hold up the fact, like, if you look at stuff and you look at the Herald, how long were we talking about Golriz? How long were they, they launched that story based off a tip from that horrible little troll, and they ran with it, and then they drip fed information out so they could squeeze that story for as much as they want. They knew, because all the media knew, that Golriz was copping a shitload of abuse, an absolute shit ton of it, but they kept drip feeding the information out rather than going, oh, we got a tip off from a fucking invested character who we know is untrustworthy, so we vetted this story before we ran it. No, we're all just discovering things in real time, and then the stuff with Tamitha, we've discussed it. Like, objectively, everyone should see that there are some communities out there, because of very recent historical examples, do not trust the police, that do not see two cops in a uniform as the cavalry coming in.
Yeah.
Now, I can acknowledge that as a straight white guy that's had a couple of dealings with the police in his life, and they've all worked out fine. I know that my experience doesn't copy paste onto everyone, and I can go, well, Tamitha's making good points. Maybe someone that's there to lock someone up isn't the best person to help someone out. Maybe that's not the person that they want to see, no matter what their motives may be. We can acknowledge that. But instead, we've got stories about her DJing at Cuba Duper. We're going, oh, she played a song about the police. Here's the lyrics from that song.
Jenna Lynch is such a music narc, isn't she?
She is just the biggest. Like, why would you do that? It's so dumb.
I put out a list. I put out a playlist this evening of other songs that she should have played. NWA. I Shot the Sheriff. Okay, let's. They mentioned Killing in the Name of. Scandalous. Rage Against the Machine. It's won the pearl clutching.
It's won the Rock's top 1,000 3 years. It's like, that was something that was scandalous when I was 16. I'm 45 this year. We know what Killing in the Name of is. Like, we know what NWA is. Like, the clip of whoop whoop is the sound of the police. That's just that's a banger. It's not a call for revolution.
Song.
Yeah.
Like,
hey,
it's just so stupid.
Bomber.
All of this.
We'll wrap up now, I think, but there is one question in the chat that I'm going to throw at you. It's a bit of a kind of screw Bomber question, but I think there'll be people who are wondering this question as well, based on some previous comments and rants that you've done. So here's a question for you, Bomber.
Yeah.
This is from Orsomosaurus. Bomber is an anti-woke troll for years. Your voice is not authoritative on this front. You don't get to tell trans people their issues don't matter, then call yourself a trans rights champion. Now, I don't think any of that has really happened tonight, but I just want to give you the chance to write a reply if you want to reply to it.
Yeah. No. Look, absolutely. I have been a vocal opponent of identity politics within the movement. I have always argued that the extremeness of identity politics takes away from class solidarity. I think the pure temple politics has hurt us. I think that when you get into absolutes and you start getting into dogma, we chased so many voters into the arms of the reactionary right. I have been critical of that, no question. But I also won't tolerate a lynch mob destroying someone's reputation based on absolute fucking lies. I don't care how Benjamin wishes to identify. That's completely his own right. My issues with the way those factions have made it quite difficult for us to win elections, that's to one side. And I'm not pretending for 1 second to be a trans rights activist here. Lord, no, that's for others to stand up and do for themselves. I'm just standing up and saying it is outrageous what is happening to Ben, and that you don't have to lock yourself into that sort of identity. This is something that affects us all. It doesn't matter what his identity is. It's outrageous what's happening to him, and we should stand in solidarity with him. I think that what Trump has been doing with the trans movement by simply erasing them in America is despicable as well. They are human beings. They deserve dignity. They deserve respect. They live in a liberal progressive democracy, and they deserve what every single one of us has: agency to go out and be the person that we are. So I have been, yes, I've been critical of some of the activists and the tactics that have led us to Trump's victory. But that doesn't mean for 1 second I agree with any of the damage these people are doing.
All right. And just before we all leave, because we asked, of course, that question is, what is a woman? Daniel just wants us to answer, what is a Winston? Which I think is a very fair question at this time of night. I don't think anybody has the answer to that. Hey, Bomber, thanks for jumping in and joining us tonight.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Always.
And we'll talk again super soon. All right. All the best. Let me also just say as well, when one gets in the middle of a rant, which I think all three of us did there at times, sometimes language becomes we use languages as more familiar to us. So I don't know if during any of that stage during the conversation I used he, him, her, he, him, and it was them there. So I just want to acknowledge and apologize for that straight away if it did happen. Hopefully, if you caught out some of us three, if we did use the wrong pronouns for Benjamin, what will land with you is our heart for him and what he's going through, not maybe a little misstep here or there on a different language schedule to be learned for that individual. Is that a fair way of saying it, Joey?
Just to illustrate the point, you did it while you were explaining.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry.
It's the intent,
Yeah.
and we're all trying. I caught myself a couple of times. It is they them. Benjamin is they them.
Yep. Yeah, so I just did it now. I you know what? That's so fun. Well, it's not funny, haha, but as I was thinking it and saying, if that happened, I did it literally with no thought. Yeah. So I apologize to Benjamin and to people who hold those pronouns done correctly as an incredibly important thing. It's not that I don't hold it as important. It's just that it may slip sometimes.
There's actually a really good point in there as well when we're talking about, words have their context, right? We could be using the wrong gendered pronoun here. We certainly don't mean it maliciously, while others will absolutely weaponize doing that. The same with using someone's dead name and that sort of thing. And for the person on the receiving end of that, they know immediately the intent. They can tell if the person's just being forgetful or just adjusting to the new reality, or they can tell if someone's just being a fucking dick about it. Words in their context and their meanings don't always come through when a reporter is sitting there going, well, give us the definition of this slang and term that we have looked up on Urban Dictionary, and it seems to be a boy's pussy.
Yeah.
So, I think Midge Enter in the chat at the top of the show goes, well, that was certainly read out by a heterosexual woman. Absolutely.
I will just tell you all now that we're probably going to drop, just because it's almost the first hour's gone, we're probably going to drop the ferry conversation tonight. However, the reason I'm okay with dropping it is because we have Tangi Utikere coming in tomorrow night from Labour, who is their infrastructure spokesperson, and we will delve more deeply into it. The other thing about the ferries is it's a non-announcement. They have said it's going to be coming in this amount of time. They don't have anyone to build it yet. They haven't signed. They don't have a shipyard. They don't have a contract. They say it's going to save billions where they haven't made a deal yet. It's all a shell game at the moment. It's cloak and daggers, but it's worth diving into to see what they've said. But we'll do it tomorrow night with Tangi, because then we'll do it properly, because me and Chewy don't have to say anything.
Winston's little press conference is unraveling in real time at the moment. People are running the numbers, and people are putting all of his spin in the opposite direction, and it's unraveling.
Well, and the biggest thing, of course, as we're not talking about this tonight, but just before we move on, the biggest thing, of course, is these ships are much bigger than the current ships, which means they're going to have new port infrastructure, which means it's going to cost them what it cost last time anyway. So like we've been saying, literally word for word since day one, We will
Day
end
fucking
up
what?
getting the second-hand Corolla for the price of the Ferrari. We will be paying them more. We will pay the same, if not more, and get a lesser product. We called that on day one. Hence, these Nicky No boats went so well because you guys know as well, and they are still available.
Just to absolutely belabor the analogy, we're not getting a second-hand Corolla. We're getting a new Corolla, and we're having to build. We're having to build a new garage because it doesn't fit in the old garage.
Yep, and that was where. Remember, we had a deal for the ferries. The deal was locked in. It was the infrastructure around the ferries that was going to cost, because the new ferries wouldn't fit on the old wharves. Guess what? These new ferries aren't going to fit on the old wharves. Nicky No boats. Look, she still goes. She's there. Nicky No boats.
I got two quick points about the ferry. I know we're going to talk about it tomorrow, but still,
this is us not talking about. We go so long. Us not talking about something still takes 10 minutes. Yes, Joey.
It'll go out of my head otherwise. Okay. Plus, here is that Winston has indicated that train go on boat. That was one of the things that
had to happen.
It looks like train doesn't indeed go on boat
for more than what Labor had negotiated for better.
But that is a long time away. And I had another. There's my other point. Ferrisy.
Not a ferry. It's a Ferrisy. All right, let's get. Look, thank you for your super chats. We will get to them now. We appreciate it. Kiwi Bird actually was before the show started, I believe. Who do you think will get more coverage, media coverage?
Well, we have our answer.
Yeah, we have our answer.
We are debating potentially, maybe because of the use of a phrase, child sex offences, and we are ignoring someone who got convicted of them, proved in a court of law with proof. There we go.
Did it all for the pussy. What? The pussy. What? Hey, you can have my money and then you your hair. Sorry. We'll get struck now because it was so accurate to
someone
the
please
song.
clip that.
How much would Shane Jones? Oh God, you shouldn't have said that. How much will Shane Jones pay to watch Bussy? Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot put a super sticker out, which I can't see on the system, but I'm sure Chewy will tell us what it is at some stage. Wait until we tell Winnie about Cussy. Well, wait until we tell Winnie about Cussy. Howie says the weapon being used against us is right wing. RW?
Right wing cash.
Right wing cash, gotcha. Being a patron is my way of defense. That's right, because if anything ever happens to you, Chewy will come out and defend. He will come to your front door and stand there and fight them back. That's exactly what it's for.
That's unless I am fist fighting someone in Oamaru because they reckon they've got a better pie somewhere else.
We need to outspend the fascists in media, in arts, in lobbying. Do it, Fano. All you can. Buy defense here. Oh, this is a plug for us. I didn't realize that at the start, Howie. Thank you for that. Buy defense here and wherever else you can manage. And look, to be honest with you, some people have signed up to be patrons. I genuinely didn't. There wasn't a big sell. I was telling you where we were. So, in fact, by the end of this month, because it's still the 31st, we have made 100 officially. Kaima Tara. I got to get the intonation right. I'm working on this. Kai Matara. There we go. David Seymour used an innuendo at a youth for act speech talking about politicians penetrating in the bedroom. Seymour told an absent girl, that just feels dirty. I need a shower. Kai Matara. High school. I told the high schooler that she's way out of his league, but Winnie and media aren't calling that out. Really? All right. Tiffany says, so the right has no clue what Bussy is. Press X. Johnny, Tim Jago situation sure has been quiet lately. I mean, people are saying Jago was found guilty and is now, suffering the consequences of it. Yeah, but literally nothing said about it by Winston Peters. Nothing. Not like it was. We all knew. Like I said to you, we all knew about this. Hey, Joey, we all knew about this thanks to his shirt. We all knew about this. And it's good that it's finally out, and it's good that he's been found guilty. Like literally nothing about an actual pedo, but as I said, linking things together, making accusations, hiding behind. I'm just asking questions. And making life for an individual in this country so dangerous that they can't come to work. That's the reality.
We found out about Tim Jago in spite of the actions of David Seymour.
Mm.
Remember, he put the complainant onto an employment lawyer, not to the police. He didn't go to the police about it. Like this was an open secret in political circles. They all knew about it.
You mean him? David Ossie, Seymour Ossie.
Oh, I don't enjoy that. It's I can't. Well, they can't sit there and just point it and go, "Oh, look, we have the moral high ground." You don't.
Yeah,
they don't. They all would have known about it. The dude had name suppression for way too long because it would have affected an election. They all knew that. Māori Party came real fucking close, like maybe even a toe
in the
over
house.
out in the house, and I give them credit for that. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. We need to keep trucking. So, Worming, thank you for the super chat. Welcome to Transgender Visibility Day, huh? Instead of celebrating our wonderful rainbow diversity, we see attacks on a member of that community. Shame. Yes, agreed fully. Okay. We're going to keep trucking, and we are going to move into a story that's actually a two-parter, and it started last night on One News. And the reason we're going to have a good look at this right now is because actually I'm not going to. It's not that we're not going to give it its due credit, but we've got another quite a significant conversation to come around Chris Bishop and Q&A as well. So let's have a quick look at this first, though. This is what's happening in Nelson. We here in Dunedin have a bit of a vested interest in, how our hospitals are being treated. We often now speak to Dr. Gary Pienda. He explains to us lots of things like how there technically isn't a hiring freeze because the government can say there's no freeze on hiring because they're hiring 2 people when 45 are needed. We're getting more and more stories coming out as to how this government has... Now, look, this is a fair way of saying it. Our health system has been struggling for a long time. This is a systemic issue for a long time. Mm-hmm. But most of these health professionals that will tell you that this government have poured jet fuel on the problems. So yes, no one's clear of the responsibility of this program, but this current government is responsible for ramping up exponentially high. Let's have a listen.
Patients' lives have been put at risk at Nelson Hospital. That's according to some of the facility's most experienced doctors. Tonight, One News gets an exclusive insight into their heavy workload and limited resourcing. While many healthcare providers are under pressure, Nelson Hospital has the worst wait times for first specialist appointments in the country, which Health New Zealand has called unacceptable. The obstetrics and gynecology department has more than 1,000 people waiting for a first appointment
And remember, gynecology was one of the situations that we talked about up north as well with Gary, his colleague. It's massive. The gynecological services aren't well catered for in this country at all.
Follow up. Jessica Roden is with us live in just a moment with more details and reaction. First, here's her report.
Amy Atkin has been in serious pain for the last 3 months.
So it's down in the lower stomach here, and it just feels like I've got a sharp knife that's being twisted.
She can't work, is taking morphine, and regularly returns to the emergency department.
This is also true. I don't understand this. She can't work. So, like, not to sound like a capitalist, but get her fixed up and send her back to work. But like in reality, if you can't work, probably a sickness benefit, I'm guessing, more power to you. Absolutely need it. As many people need to be on it as they can. But a good business practice would be to get those people back into the workforce. Therefore, you get them into their medical issues sorted out as quickly as possible. But it seems that the health system in general, and like I said, jet fuel today, has been like, let these people wait. Oh my gosh, look at the bill that we've got for people on benefits. Yeah, well, let's get them off benefits by helping them with their surgeries to get them back into the workforce. It doesn't seem to, that logic doesn't seem to fall with pretty much any government, but this one in particular.
I can't do much through the day. It's taken over my life effectively.
Her story's upsetting, but it's not isolated. This is the head of Nelson's obstetrics and gynecology department, and Amy is just one of many on her wait list.
We have over 1,000 patients that are waiting for either a first specialist appointment or a follow-up appointment. I've never seen that number of patients waiting to be seen.
480 of them have been waiting for more than the 4-month target timeframe. The longest wait now almost 2 years, and that can lead to complications.
The first one that we worry about the most is needing an emergent hysterectomy.
Saying that's not as safe as a planned operation.
That is genuinely a life-threatening situation, and that's the situation we have found ourselves in more times than we would like.
It should never happen.
Yeah, I can't think of a time in my career outside of the last 2 years.
Can I just offer something? Because I've just looked it up, so I would have had it earlier. I'm sorry. They say there's 1,000 people on that wait list for gynecological issues, obstetrics and gynecological issues. So in the Nelson-Marlborough area services 150,000 people under their DHB. So there's 150,000 people in the Nelson-Marlborough DHB. 1,000 of them, that's like 0.75% of the entire population are waiting. That is a huge number of people out of 150,000 people. If it was out of 3 million, you'd go, no, it's a small percentage, but it's out of 150,000 people. 1,000 people on that wait list, let alone all the other ones. It's huge.
Where I've seen or done an emergency hysterectomy for the reasons we're now seeing and doing them.
There's always patients that deteriorate for whatever reason on our waiting lists. That happens right across the world. Is there a new trend here? Is something that we're looking into.
Their department isn't the only one struggling. Daniel Walker is still recovering from a surgery that doctors say...
Fair wise say trigger warning, by the way. Probably a bit late because there's the scar, but it's pretty graphic.
...could have been avoided.
And they had to get the lymph node over here.
He had a swollen testicle last year.
My GP had done it as a urgent cancer referral, and they had changed it to a right painless testicle, basically. So had downgraded my diagnosis.
He should have been seen in 2 weeks. It took 9. And during that time, the cancer spread.
The old Daniel died in that chemo, in that whole process. And that this new Daniel now is someone that I don't recognise.
My mind boggles why he waited that period of time.
Dr. Suzanne Boker says over the last 2 years, extended leave of senior doctors hasn't been covered and the urology department waitlist has soared.
Many patients that have been triaged to be seen within 56 days are waiting in excess of 9 to 12 months.
On occasion, it's left her in tears.
And certainly I've seen patients that I believe their disease has gone from curable to incurable during that waiting time.
And many aren't even making it onto the wait list.
If you've got a cancer or an organ-threatening condition, you'll be seen in our urology service. Otherwise, you just won't be seen.
Private specialists were recently flown in to help clear the urology backlog. The doctors and their union...
Paid for, remember we had this chat with Gary, paid for by the public money. Remember, Gary Payenda made this very clear. Basically, one of the ways the private sector survives is on the public dollar, public money going into it. There's an example of it. 50 million about to go to get rid of a backlog of surgery wait lists. Public money paying private specialists.
Association of Salaried Medical Specialists have been raising these issues for months, if not years. Nelson's now the worst in the country for first specialist appointments.
That's unacceptable to me and to the clinical teams, and clearly not okay for the community.
He says some roles advertised couldn't be filled, but that more doctors could be on the way.
We won't be able to do everything immediately, so where is our greatest risk? And clearly Nelson's going to be a key feature.
Management has suggested working weekends, delaying follow-up appointments and only doing emergency operations.
So I'm sure that won't hurt the system at all. Delaying follow-ups, that sort of thing, I'd be fine.
To get through the wait list.
What do you think of that suggestion?
It'll get the patient seen, but
not treated.
Not treated.
Amy has been told it'll be a year before she's seen.
If you were to get your first specialist appointment tomorrow, how would that feel?
I'd be amazed. I'll be so happy just to have at least a plan.
A plan to get her life back on track.
There you go. That's the story. And just because some people in the chat have questioned the Nelson-Marlborough thing, let me just read out the stat that I read. Health New Zealand, Nelson-Marlborough serves approximately 150,000 people across the Nelson, Marlborough and Tasman regions. I think someone in the chat said there was another 170,000. According to this, which is from goforgood.nz, 150,000 is Nelson, Marlborough, Tasman. That's who the DHB services. Chewy.
Now, I can't talk about the Nelson Marlborough area without making this cheap shot. They've got that huge wait list with a lot of people in that area don't even believe in medicine. So imagine if they all did. The wait list would be much, much longer. Look, this is something that we are seeing right throughout the country. You can swap out the name of the area if you want. Both of my parents have gone through Timaru Hospital in the last 6 months. I have a friend there that works in admin at that hospital. The comments that she's had about the lack of IT support has disappeared, paperwork's getting lost, people are losing their slots and getting surgery because of admin issues. Now, remember, all of these cuts was dead wood in the back room. We're seeing that. We're seeing what happens when you take out the dead wood, the people that organize this sort of stuff. You can't expect a doctor and a nurse solely to run a hospital.
Yeah.
They end up being asked to clean out bedpans and make beds, and maybe the paperwork will work out, maybe it won't. I think what really galls me with this particular issue is that I also know of female friends of mine that have had gynecological issues and that sort of thing. And the stories that you hear from those women is quite often around endometriosis, hope I said that right, of going through multiple GPs, spending years and years and years going, hey, look, I don't think this is normal. I'm in crippling pain. I have time off work once a month. And just being told, every woman goes through that. You're just blowing it out of proportion. Spending years and years and years to find someone that believes you. Then you've got to convince them that, hey, look, just take it out. Take the work. I've had 2 kids. It didn't fix anything. Just get rid of the plumbing, and I can have the quality of life back. And GP signs off on that or finds a specialist to do that, and then you go into the public health system, and this is what you get. More waiting, more quality of life gone. And if you get to that point where you've got burned out doctors trying their hardest, doing extra shifts to try and get that wait list down because they care about this sort of stuff, but they're burned out, and then you have mistakes happen. That's when you get people having, say if it was cancer of the testicles, having the wrong testicle taken off. Someone leaves a sponge inside you, sews you back up again. This is where this shit happens. And I think, Pat, you're quite right to identify the fact that in the urge to cut costs, they end up increasing costs to the country. That lost productivity, the fact that people are on benefits and that sort of thing. And actually, there was an excellent clarification here from Politikiwi. There is no sickness benefit. I work at WINS, and could please stop saying sickness benefit?
What's it called?
They're mainly on a job seeker,
supported living,
medical certificate, or supported living. So yeah, we changed the language, but
so supported living. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And that's the same sort of thing.
For God's sake, stop using the wrong word, Pat. God,
get it together.
It's been a night of using the wrong words, Pat.
But yeah, I mean, this is, you have these people, and then the way that WINS has now been weaponized, right? They could find that information out, or they could just drag this person back into the office every 3 months because we all know that they're faking it and ripping off the long-suffering taxpayer of New Zealand and his portfolio. So
his portfolio, just the one.
It's his
long-suffering.
portfolio.
His portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's bullshit, and we know where it's coming from. It's coming from underfunding. Like, I keep coming back to this graph. This is the annual health spend change per person in real terms. And we've got big red blocks for the Labor government, pretty consistent. You got Key's national government in there, in the middle. Still a percentage increase, but a very small one. And then you've got our current government, where it is 3% reduction.
Mm.
And that is why our health system is tanking, and it is by design. The government doesn't have any rights to be running a health system. They can't do it efficiently. Look at these huge waiting lists. Look at all the pain and misery. And we're just pouring money into it, and it's not changing anything. Best let someone else have a go. And we lose our public health system.
Very good. Not very good, but very good point made.
None of it's good, Pat. None of it.
Kiwi Bird saying women are suffering and Winston is chasing Bussy, apparently. Kooky and Nick, you missed some fire at the start, Kooky. Late fee, soz. And also, apparently, we all have a new favourite person in chat, apparently. Donation on behalf of Mars, because they love the chat so much. I'm not sure who Mars is, but obviously lots of new friends being made in the chat. Thank you, Mystery Stranger, for the $10 super chat. Do you want to speak to those other super chats that you have starred for a reason?
What have I got? I've already done that one. We've also done that one.
No. Fair enough.
Yeah, Marzipan basically, I think maybe even got in before my comment there. That's the number that have convinced their GP to refer them. Often women's issues are ignored. Oh, you're exaggerating. It can't be that bad. Women are designed to suffer. All of that good stuff means it's a really hard road. Like, here we are in the 2020s. The friend that I am basically talking about, when she had a GP that she went to and said, hey, look, I've had this problem for years. And she was asked, maybe you should come back with your husband. And she's like, motherfucker, I've had 2 kids. I don't want any more. It's my body. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do it. You need to get your husband.
Wow.
What? Does that make you angry? It made me angry. There's nothing to do with me. It's just so stupid.
I wonder if he'd asked the guy the same question if he was having his tubes tied. Oh, maybe you should get the missus in.
Oh, you wonder, do you, Pat? Do you think that's ever happened?
I don't know the answer to that question, Joey. I just wonder out loud.
Yeah. And this comment from Miss Scruffador. A few years ago, when I needed gyno help, there were only 2 gynecologists at Nelson Hospital. One of them delivered me as a baby.
God.
He's retired now. So what does that say about our planning? And encouraging people into those career lines and that sort of thing. It's just so fucked. Like, the long-term thinking, I laughed when Winston said that they were making long-term thinking decisions over a 30-year period when he's talking about the ferries. We know that the governments don't think that long-term. They don't think 30 years. Like, why are we not looking at going, oh, well, how many doctors do we have, surgeons that specialize in gynecological issues? Do we have enough for the next 30 years? Are we still training enough? Are we importing enough if we're not training enough to make sure that every hospital in the region has enough people to look after the area that hospital serves? This is when people talk about big government and big brother and social engineering. This is what I want. I want people engineering that there's enough doctors in hospitals without having to shuffle them around. Like, I remember being look, I know people will go, fucking trans issues. How many doctors do gender reassignment surgeries, public or private, in the country? I remember reading an article that there was one, and he was retiring. That was a few years ago. I don't know if it's been resolved hand on heart, but can you imagine that? Just from an empathy point of view, imagine that you are trapped in the wrong body and there is a way to fix it, but you have to go on the wait list, and hopefully you get looked after on the wait list before that doctor retires.
Yeah.
That's mad.
Late fee, says Jeremy Naylor. Thank you for your super chat. Right, we're going to move into the last conversation of the night. And we're really only going to focus on one question with the Bish. Q&A in the weekend, talking a lot about housing. We're going to pick it up very quickly where Jack Tame is asking Christopher Bishop if he thinks that national policy has led to more homelessness. This is the only question we're going to look at tonight.
I know the answer to this one. Let's see if
in
Bish
August,
does.
your government tightened up the gateway to emergency housing, and your officials warned at the time about the changes causing an increase in homelessness. Here's what they said, quote, making these changes ahead of significant increases to the supply of affordable housing and more preventative wraparound supports does create a risk of increased levels of rough sleeping, people living in cars and overcrowding. You pushed ahead with those changes anyway. Has changing the emergency housing policy increased homelessness?
I don't believe so. I think it has made the system clearer for everybody to understand. There will always be a need for emergency housing. I want to make that really clear. And for people who need emergency housing, it will always be there.
So you don't believe so? Based on what?
Based on what I see and hear around the place.
But give us some see and hear, that's just anecdotal.
That's like, I can remember a comedian once telling a joke about how society was struggling, and he was like, yeah, apparently the research says that everyone's getting poorer. Yeah, I've never been more rich. So it's basically that level of, what I'm seeing and hearing. No, like all the guys around me in that oval table on the 9th floor, they're all doing well. Their portfolios are looking fine.
Based on what I see and hear around the place.
But give us some data. See and hear, that's just anecdotal. Give us some data.
The register was 25,000 when we came in. It's now 20,000.
I understand the register. I understand the register's gone down. I understand the emergency housing's gone down. What about homeless numbers?
Well, there is basically no agreed definition.
This is a really interesting conversation. Sorry to cut in, because for the first kind of quarter of it, you can see this is halfway through the conversation. The Bish almost came across like he was a decent human being. And I think we've heard that sometimes from Kieran. And there's several questions in this conversation where Jack's saying to him, why don't the rest of your cabinet kind of agree with you? You're wanting to do this other thing. Why are they not going to support you in this? Like 3 or 4 times, the themes of that question kind of came up, which was sort of interesting to watch. Although the Bish doesn't really have much of a comeback for, are you causing more homelessness? He's going to have to play that with a pretty straight bat, and he can't.
Of what homelessness is. Okay, there's a Stats New Zealand thing which is done as part of the census every 5 years. Can you
point to any homeless measure, accepting that there's disagreement about how you define homelessness? Can you point to any homeless measure during your time in government that has gone down?
Yes, I've just given you the social housing register and emergency housing. Well, those aren't homeless measures. Those are hard. That's hard data.
Those are people waiting on a register for a social house. That doesn't suggest that the number of people on the streets has gone down.
There is no government measure that measures homelessness.
Okay,
the ones we have are proxies.
There are Auckland City Council. There are Wellington Council. So yes, but those changes. Hang on a second. Those changes came into.
So therefore, if you can point to literally nothing, even as Jack said, even if there, if you can debate which are the right ones, but if you can point to nothing, how can they make any decisions or any conclusions based around that policy? He can't even say there's much thought about this. One part would say this, one part would say that. We think this. He won't point to anything. No contrary information at all. Just nothing, Chewy.
No, that's all I've got. It's just a very loud noise.
All right.
Council, there are Wellington Council. So yes, but those changes. Hang on a second. Those changes came into effect at the end of August, right? So between September and January, Auckland Council's community impact team recorded a 53% increase in the number of people living in cars, parks, or the streets. In the 12 months at the end of last year, Wellington data showed rough sleeper numbers increased by.
So this would be Jack pointing to data. Like, even if it's contestable, he's pointing to something. When the Bish, the guy who is making decisions and who is a representative for the government there, will and has pointed to nothing. The journalist, he's pointing to some data.
Streets. In the 12 months at the end of last year, Wellington data showed rough sleeper numbers increased by 1/3. Do you accept that your changes could have contributed to higher numbers of homeless people?
No, because I think when people are in those situations, they should talk to MSD, and there will be housing support available for them. We spend.
He's saying no because there's an answer that hasn't worked yet. No, because they can be not homeless if they choose to be.
They should talk to MSD, and there will be housing support available for them. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars every month on housing support, or tens of millions of dollars every month on hundreds of millions of dollars per year on housing support. There is social housing available. There's emergency. There's transitional
we
housing.
Appreciate that these measures are so. No one's disputing that you've completely torn out all of the social supports that might be available. However, the changes that you introduced, it's pretty clear, have made the gateway to emergency housing much more complicated. So the State of the Nation report from the Salvation Army said that introducing reduction targets and tightening the criteria, the gateway to emergency housing, is likely, quote, a key contributor to the rising street homelessness.
Well, that's their view. We've also made
their view. It's the Auckland Council view. It's the Wellington measure as well.
We've also made it easier to get out. There are now hundreds, thousands of children who were living in emergency housing motels who are now living in warm, dry homes as a result of the changes made by the government.
So this is the critical point.
Children.
So emergency housing before you came in was costing New Zealand more than $300 million a year.
Correct.
Vastly expensive.
$1 million a day.
Yeah. So Tama Pōtaka, your associate minister, says that 80% of those moving out of emergency housing were going to better, more permanent solutions, which is great. But it still leaves 20%, right?
Yes.
And so if the policy settings that you have introduced put 80% of people from emergency housing into better options, but leave 20% of people on the streets, is it worth it?
Well, it's a great question, because what he's basically asking is that payoff okay with you guys? Is it okay to help the 80% to screw over the bottom 20% even more? It's a really interesting question. It's actually an interesting debate as well. You know, do you help 80% and fuck the 20%, or would that still be seen as a failure? Different political parties would see that differently.
But leave 20% of people on the streets, is it worth it?
Well, I don't think it's correct to say that those 20% are on the streets.
Except that you can't point to any data that actually suggests they aren't. And I can give you numbers from Auckland Council, from Wellington, concerns from the Salvation Army, which suggest the number of people sleeping on the streets.
We don't have trackers on everyone. We're not running a police
state. Well,
Auckland
Council...
Don't tell Winston Peters that. His supporters think there's trackers on everybody. You know, just be aware. Just be aware.
We're not doing that.
We're not doing it yet. Good point.
I mean, Auckland Council's community impact team go and get this data all the time. Before you were in government, they got this data. And between September and January of this year, 227 more people were recorded as sleeping on the streets. There's data. You can't give me any.
There's that data, and then there's the
and then there's what people are telling you. I mean, this is the thing, right? And maybe it's a payoff that's worth making, especially given the expense, $300 million a year. Emergency housing.
We'll just say this: we've missed you, Jack. Welcome back.
It's a payoff that's worth making, especially given the expense, $300 million a year. Emergency housing, a lot of people have said, was a terrible policy. You've described it as one of the biggest policy failures in New Zealand history. The question is, if the cost of getting all of those people out of emergency housing and into better options is that some fall through the cracks and end up on the streets, is it worth it?
There is always support available for people who are sleeping on the streets, who are sleeping rough, who are sleeping in cars. The government will always provide support for those people. MSD do that each and every day. Emergency housing, as it was before, which was essentially a free-for-all, was a disaster. We have made it harder to get in, but we have also made it easier to get out, which is why we can point to the signs of success. But am I pretending everything's perfect? Absolutely not. Emergency housing is a symptom of our broken and dysfunctional housing market. That's why we are doing all the things around greenfields, around density, around freeing up land. All of those things will flow on to have an impact. It's very important.
So if you call just...
There you go. There's the end of that. I do actually have another one that I wasn't going to play, but maybe we'll, because it's only 60 seconds. But Joe, first of all, your response?
I'm going to have I'm going to start by giving the Bish a compliment. I like that there is one thing that we can tell that is an honest noise that comes out of his mouth, and it's when he knows he's completely fucked. Also, Jack, if you're watching the show, or if any of your team are, I know it's a serious news grill show. Should be classed as a cooking show. Some of these, someone's definitely getting cooked. But when you have someone on the ropes, as much as you do here, you should be able to reach under your desk and pull out one of those little comedy red buttons and just slide it across the desk to your target and say, "Hey, buddy, if you just push this button, this all ends.
Yeah.
This all ends. The show ends. Just go, I admit, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
It's actually that's actually a really interesting idea, Chewy, in a media sense, to actually have the get out of jail card. That would be an amazing thing to see if you could make someone use it. Yeah.
You know, where are the people, Bish? I don't know. Just a shrug emoji could have been sitting in that chair for most of it. Like, he even does that thing that I keep on pointing out that the National Party does really well. He identified the problem. The housing market's fucked. That's why they gave all those tax breaks to the to the property owners to solve that problem, right? If this government wanted to solve the problem of homelessness, it could. There are countries around the world that have done that. They went on basically a binge of building essentially supported tiny homes.
Well, let's pause there, because I'm going to play this last clip. Technically, it played before what we just did, but they were talking a little bit about how many houses are funded by this government. And it's interesting, with all the criticisms they had of the last guys and what the last guys were up to and how the last guys have impacted the planning for various policies, they're pretty keen to own the last guy's funding and decisions made for building houses in their term. Have a listen. It's only 60 seconds or so.
The net result this year, how many new state houses will be built in Auckland this year?
Can't remember off the top of my head in terms of Auckland. We've
Why would
delivered
you not know
2,000 in Auckland.
Those are funded under the last government, though.
Yeah, funded under the last government.
So
yeah. We'll get to 3,000 by the time of the next election, which was the commitment we gave on the 2023 election.
But when you'll get to 3,000, how many of those are funded by the previous government?
Well,
2,000.
Yes, some of them will be.
Well, there's not really a commitment, is it? I mean, so you said in the last election campaign that you would continue to increase the state public housing stock in Auckland by building new stock at least the current net build rate of 1,000 houses a year.
Yes, and we'll get to 3,000.
But 2,000 were funded under the last government.
Yeah, well, we inherit.
It's not really the spirit of the pledge, is it?
Funding continue. I mean, we inherited funding settings from the previous government. Budget 2023 funneled money into social housing in Auckland and other parts of the country.
Okay.
We took a range of budget savings in budget 2024, but there's
but if you're saying you're going to build 3,000 houses in Auckland, and actually you've only funded 1,000 houses, and the previous 2,000 were funded by the last government.
There's an upcoming budget, and there's an upcoming budget in 2026 as well.
Yes.
And as I say, we've got
houses take time to build.
Yeah, that's right. And we've got quite big fundamental changes happening to the social housing system. And it is really important we get that right, because the system isn't working.
Okay.
Right? 20,000 people are on the register.
So
there you go. I do like watching wee Jack have a bit of a giggle. Even he knows how ridiculous that is, that they're promising to build 1,000 houses a year, and after the first 3 years, they can take credit for 1,000 if we get there. That's by the end of next year. So technically, last year and this year are on Labor. Next year, they're 1,000 if they get there. Hilarious.
I've said this before. Why would a politician go on Jack's show and not be across such an obvious question of how many state houses have you built in our major metropolitan area? Like, I could forgive it if he went, well, how many social houses have you built in Dunedin? I don't know, Dunedin, all the way tucked down there. Who knows? I know how many I've cancelled. Cancelled a whole bunch of developments in Dunedin. We've still got people sleeping in the Oval, under tents, going into yet another winter. You remember when I went on that crusade last year?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Guess what? It's coming back again. We've still got people living in tents. This is the thing. A government could act with urgency. A government could see this for the emergency that it is. Our housing crisis emergency, people sleeping in cars, was something that we were criticising, not on BHN because it didn't exist at that point, but I was certainly criticising the government way back when it was Paula Bennett and John Key saying there is no housing crisis. People sleep in their cars because they want to.
Let us wrap by saying Wu-Ming says some people don't trust MSD. Yep.
Oh.
And Arvid says Bishussy. So there you go as well. Sorry, you're going to mention that?
Absolute brainworms that Bishop must have to think that go, oh, if you're in need of emergency housing, just go to MSD. It makes it sound like you book an appointment, you go in and they go, here's a house from the house tree. It doesn't happen. You get fucked around, especially when a government comes in and basically changes the settings on how you treat people asking for help.
Can I also say, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, I'm trying to mean this in an accurate way. Very often, homeless people, now there's different categories, there's unhoused, there's rough sleepers, there's homeless, but homeless people, the people who are long-term living on the streets and homeless, addiction, mental health issues, all these things are often a really big part of their life. So to basically give them a logical, well, just do what everyone else can do. Go into MSD. For people in that state, in that time, it doesn't work for them so well. When we talk about things like defunding the police, which we know is not defunding the police, it's allocating some of the funding that goes into the police, maybe in other areas like mental health areas. If that was happening, there could be those kinds of people that could get along, those kinds of homeless people, to actually help them get along to MSD, or something could be set up for them to do that. But just to say, go to MSD. Okay, I got no license. I can't prove who I am. I don't have a bank account, but just go to MSD. It's not always quite as simple as the Bish makes it out. That's what I'm saying. Yes, Chewy.
I was just going to say there's a new reality TV show in there to go with my Big Brother politician house. That was awesome. Let's start a TV network, Pat. We're fucking half the way there.
We're kind of there. Let me just, okay, you got another, because I wanted to show people, I want to show people this, one more thing about this, but have you got a final point, a beginning final point?
I was just going to say we could do a Naked and Afraid, but it's Bish just dropped into an urban centre, and it is a speed run to see how long he can get in, how quickly he can get into emergency housing. Take everything off him.
Speaking of building our own network, I've already told you about this tonight. Locked out with Craig Rennie. The reason I wanted to show you one more thing is the one thing I didn't tell you tonight.
How good is that logo?
How good is that logo?
It's so good.
And can I just say, this may not be the final artwork, but we were so excited about it, we had to tell you something. That's what this is about. What I'd like to show you is one thing that I sent to Chewy today. There are people who are excited about this. There are lots of people who are excited about this.
Nerds.
For example, Helen Clark is excited about this.
What a nerd.
Auntie Helen. Helen Clark is sort of my Jacinda, my era's Jacinda, working for families, interest-free student loans. Auntie Helen's excited about this. Thank you, patrons, for giving Auntie Helen something to be excited about. And that makes us excited as well. I'm done.
All right.
Anything else? You're good?
No, because we're 7 minutes over our already inflated runtime.
No, this is hour 37 is pretty good for a Monday, bro. Often a Monday goes a lot longer than that.
That's true. They do load us up with all the bullshit on Monday. Hey, look, I just out of what we.
Oh God, that wasn't an invite for a tangent.
Well,
it was an observation.
Now. I just want to say one thing.
No, look, they've started. They've started.
They have started, and they can continue while I say my piece. One thing I want to say out of this ridiculous bullshit that Winston's stirring up. Just remember the people that identify themselves as being in the same community as Benjamin, they're going to be feeling it. And I've seen that throughout social media of just an almost crushing weight of, oh shit, here we go again. So if you know people in that community or you identify in that community, you deserve all the support that you can get. And no one's going to judge you if you go, I'm not going to do this fight this time. I'm going to take a moment, and no one's going to judge you, or certainly I'm not going to judge you if you go the opposite way and go, right, this is it, bring it on, motherfucker. There is no wrong way to do this. Just make sure it's right for you. There.
And clear. Is that right?
Yes.
Remember, tomorrow night we are going to have Labour MP and spokesman, I think, for transport and spokesman for infrastructure maybe as well. Tangi Utikere, who's going to be joining us to talk about the ferry. So a lot of ferry chat tomorrow night. If you enjoy ferries, if you've got ferries at the end of your yard, if you want to talk about ferries, then ferries tomorrow night with Tangi and us.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the skinny chin chin when the news that we're watching is hairy. Knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A in a self and a higher in mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by both Chewy and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Alrighty, Fano, thanks for being with us tonight. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night from 9. Be safe, be swell. If you've ordered merch with us and you haven't had an email that it's being delivered, it's probably going to be on the courier tomorrow. So stay aware for that. I don't think that makes sense, but be aware. That'll probably happen tomorrow. Joey, anything from you?
No, that's it for me. I've vented all of my spleen. I will start saving up spleen for tomorrow.
We are spleenless now, Fano, but I'm sure we'll have lots of opportunity to re-spleen before tomorrow night's show. Catch you then, 9 p.m. live for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.